Welcome everyone. Today we are going to tackle the big topic of medical artificial intelligence. Now, this is a topic that is all over the place, all over the news right now. People talk about AI and they talk about healthcare and medicine. But how does that actually work and what is medical AI? We are going to take a look at that question and answer it in a way that hopefully makes reality more engineerable and the future better. The first important insight is that medical AI is probably the greatest opportunity of our time. Let me explain why. We all know that AI is changing the way we interact with the world and we can change the world through it. And so the question is, what is the greatest opportunity within AI? And the answer is, well, it's probably the biggest problem all of us face and the biggest economic sector of all. And the biggest economic sector and biggest problem is healthcare. Because healthcare is about the question, how do we live and survive? And for everyone, staying alive and seeing your loved ones alive is the most valuable thing. Therefore, by pure reasoning and logic, medical AI is the greatest opportunity of our time. We are talking about $4 trillion a year of the economic vertical in the United States. Since the 19th century, medicine hasn't changed too much, even though it looks like it. But when you look at survival rates, we are flattening out at 78 years. Life expectancy since the early 2020s. So there is not much progress going on right now. And that has a lot of reasons. It has to do with big data, with medical records, with the entire healthcare system getting a little stuck up there, the 78 average life expectancy rate, and the necessity for introducing completely new perspectives on medicine, systemic perspectives, value-based care, systemic outcomes, where you understand every single data point of a person across the entire lifespan, adjust all medical actions being taken, all preventative actions, and engineer the entire thing towards an outcome. And for that, you need massive underlying data systems. And if we fix and build these data systems, we can get into an age very quickly. Into an age where cures and prevention are being taken to the next level, where we achieve true precision medicine for everyone. Now we have all the tools already ready, but some things are missing, and medical AI is the big opportunity to change that and revolutionize medicine in tremendous ways. Now the second important paradigm of medical AI is that making sense of data is easy at this point, but generating data is hard. That's very important because a lot of people get this a little bit wrong. They talk about new AI models, right? They talk about the new capabilities of these complex large language models, and they talk about the giant compute capacities we're building with NVIDIA and other chip makers. But that's not really the problem in healthcare. The real problem is we don't have the data, and we don't have the data in the right structures to even apply advanced AI to it. And changing that is much harder than making sense of data. Let me give you an example. In AI, we often talk about these three fundamental pieces that have to come together. Models, which is like the algorithms, compute, which is the compute power, and data, which is the data sets. Now in healthcare, I would venture out to say the relationship or ratios of how important each of these pieces are 5, 5, 90. 5% of values can be incrementally generated through models at this point in time. 5% through compute and 90% through data, because the data is the problem. When you look at electronic medical records or EHR, electronic health records, it's an epic mess. And if you know the EPIC system, which is actually a software system, you know that this is a little pun, but it's an epic mess. Genomics data, the biggest chunk, and we will talk more in a second about it, is not even available in these records. Right? The vast majority of healthcare data isn't even in these records. And the others is unstructured. You also have old medicine 2.0 workflows, right? Preventative care is not really a thing. Most data points that are important for prevention are not even captured. So we have a lot of structural problems, missing data, systems problems. Why is this all important? Just to drive this home, this point, because the models and the compute are not going to help if we don't fix the underlying data structures. And that's also where the greatest value can be generated. In order to do that, we require something that I call a data transformation vector. Because this is not a small project. In order to get this data in and understand and merge genomics with medical records and get all the missing data points in and create complete medical profiles of people, you need to build hard infrastructure. And with infrastructure, I mean the processes, the knowledge, and all these things that get patients actually synced with the electronic medical records, that asks the right questions, runs the right tests, gets the results into the records, and then restructures the whole thing. The bottom line here is, this is not a quick project. This is not a startup that you can build that goes to health systems and says, oh, let's fix this stuff. No. We are talking about a multi-year process and project that needs to be implemented in every single hospital system in the world. And that's why I call it a data transformation vector that is needed. Not a project, not a startup. It needs to be a transformation vector. And what I mean by the vector is some sort of a change engine that sits inside a hospital and continuously pushes the entire system in completing their records and completing a holistic data lake and data infrastructure. And that has to do with a lot of things. It's a transformation project, a change project, and it has to do with money, with incentives, with alignments. You need to inject something into hospitals that makes it so attractive and such a forcing function that this is not just a nice to have thing, but a must have problem to solve. And I believe, having done this for quite some time now, that genomics is the key catalyst to unlock medical big data. So maybe you think that's random. Why genomics of all the things? Why not imaging or something? Because genomics changes healthcare data. Let me explain how. The average electronic medical record of a patient today in the United States has 217,000 data points. So every single data point in your medical record of the average aged person is 217,000 data points. A single genomics record, assuming a whole exome file, for example, has 30 million digital data points, if not much more, that are all relevant. So by just injecting genomics into the healthcare equation, you 150 to 2000x the amounts of data for each patient. And by doing so, you are creating a new problem and a new demand for the cloud for electronic records that has to be solved, that can only be solved through a level of magnitudes higher intelligence and system sophistication, which is a very important shock to the system that triggers and unlocks that data transformation vector in healthcare systems. And genomics spans all areas, from care and therapy to prevention to research. So if done right, genomics unlocks a new era of medical big data and creates this transformation vector that is necessary to also get all the other data straight. It's a forcing function for disruptive innovation in data. Now let's talk a little bit about what the problem is. Genomics has been around the block, and it has been in many respects a failure. It has done many important things, but it has completely failed to be this transformation engine. And the reason for that is that genomics industry and genomics companies have remained very centralized and outside hospitals, right? So all the big genomics data is not aggregated or being used within hospitals. It is being used at centralized genomics companies that then don't have access to the medical records of the hospitals because there's a barrier between that. No one is going to share these records. So every incremental progress that has been made were like one-off deals, right? Companies like Tempus or Guardant or 23andMe, they go to one hospital system and sign one deal, and then maybe one deal with a pharma company, and then there's a very, very narrow subset of data that's being extracted and paid for, and there's some research done. But that is not transforming on a foundational level the electronic medical record systems. And it's not being applied in medical care. So in order to unlock the full power of genomics as the transformation vector in medical AI big data, we need to do something with the genomics industry. We need to do something that fundamentally changes the paradigm. And I call that the decentralized genomics model. And by decentralizing genomics, we unlock unified medical data. Now, this decentralization is a system we are working on right now here with some partners. And the idea is very simple. If that power sits in genomics and that power can transform hospital systems, providers, and payers, then we need to get genomics inside the hospitals and not outside. And the only way to do that is to build real data and laboratory infrastructure and medical integration infrastructure that decentralizes these centralized genomics labs and puts it into hospitals. Now, the good news is that is actually an incredibly exciting financial and medical proposition to hospitals, because they would make massively more money, which is always good. That's a good driver. And they would massively increase medical care quality, because they have faster turnaround times for the genomic profiling tests, and they have this data at their fingertips at any point in time. The only problem that needed to be overcome is it's a huge technology transfer. These are highly complex cloud and laboratory systems that need to be actually installed and made effective inside the hospitals. But fortunately, that problem has been solved. And so today in 2023, we can go full speed, decentralizing the genomics install base in the world, getting into hospitals. And my prediction is this is the inflection point for the unified medical data problem. Now, let's assume a few years from now, this has been done effectively. It's a giant new industry. We have decentralized genomics. We have triggered an enormous transformation vector for medical and unified data. What do we do then? Well, once you have that infrastructure, right, and once you have a system, a cloud system within hospitals that has structured data across all areas, heavily defined by genomics, but also defined by all the other data points, then you have access to something you don't have access today. Structured, unified, big medical data in hospitals. And what do you do with that, and why is that so game-changing and so world-changing? Because once you have that, you can use medical AI to allow yourself to engineer actions towards outcomes. Instead of just doing medicine as we always did it, right? In standardized, standard operating procedures and guidelines. Now you can actually understand which exact action for what patient in what context and what point in time will most likely lead to what outcome. And you can do that in real time. So for example, patient A, right, with the same disease might need a certain medication or certain intervention. Another patient might not need that intervention. For example, because of a different family history, of a different genomic profile, or of a different preceding medical history. This quickly becomes so complicated and so personalized that no physician in the world could ever do that. But AI can do it by seeing the entire data lake and the entire integrated structure. We can now, with that system, deploy not just precision medication, or we can also, on a timeline, decide who needs what intervention of any sort at what point in time, and who should get what level of prevention and screening at one point in time to minimize the risk of bad outcomes in the future. It would be the most magic and the most effective way of preventing and curing disease. And once we have that piece of the equation solved and have that in there, which can happen in the next years, in the next couple of years for the first systems, unified medical AI, together with bold pioneers, will unlock the future. And that is very important, because what I just said in the previous point is theoretically true. Of course, you can now align actions with outcomes, but who does that? Well, it's a new type of entrepreneur, a new type of bold pioneer in healthcare that approaches this problem now with a holistic and systemic perspective. Because in the future, in the very close future of healthcare, innovation will not be a new medical device alone, a new drug, or a new piece of software. No. It will be a holistic perspective on systems where pioneers understand we can now shift and change and reorganize the entire hospital system or payer system so we save money and save lives on a dramatic scale. But in order to do that, we need systemic thinkers who are AI and data-driven thinkers, who are outcome-based thinkers, who are pioneers, not incrementalists. And these new pioneers need to come from somewhere, and this new type of thinking needs to be created. And I think in anticipation of this great medical AI revolution that is in the works right now, carried by the great data revolution that is carried by the genomics revolution and the decentralization of genomics, we should start being very proactive in getting that message out and making entrepreneurs excited and paint the picture of value-based care and holistic systemic re-engineering of entire healthcare systems based on this new data. It would align our data production infrastructure, and it would make it more exciting for every entrepreneur to tackle big healthcare problems with the outcomes in mind and with the ability to truly re-engineer how we do medicine in order to save people.